Retro.
And welcome everybody to a Freakazoid episode of the Animaniacast.
I came to see you, Dexter Douglas, because I know you also change.
Change? What do you mean?
It is said that even a computer nerd who says his prayers at night and makes redundant backups on his mirror drive may become a Freakazoid when the delete key is hit.
Behold, the mark.
Will you stop grabbing me? That was just an imprint from a bottle of Delete Cola.
Argue about this on your own time. Who will give me car fare?
She always does this. Don't give her anything.
I heard that. Fine. I curse you, I curse you, I curse you. Goodbye.
And welcome everybody once again to another episode of Freakazoid and Friends. Yes, this is the spin-off series of the Animanicast. Yes, this is the only podcast out there that lets you freak out about Freakazoid. And here we pick a random episode in sequential order. We revisit all the cultural references and gags that we can find. And of course, in the end, we're going to give this episode of Freakazoid a water tower rating. I am Joey, and joining me once again are my co-hosts. There's my brother Nathan.
I feel better than a nice tub of good things.
And across the country in Georgia, it's Kelly.
Hello.
There were so many different lines in here that I didn't know if Nathan was going to say. I never know.
Which one did you think I was going to do?
I don't know. You don't understand.
That's
Maybe
what I was thinking too.
Or I curse you, I curse you, I curse you. Goodbye.
That'd be a good one.
That's a good one too. But anyway, today we are talking about episode 12. We're almost at the end of the first season of Freakazoid, which is kind of crazy that they only had 13 episodes in their first season.
Compared to Animaniacs.
Compared to Animaniacs, it's just, well, yeah, Animaniacs had 65.
I think it was 65.
Yeah, and then, yes, because then they ended with the 65th anniversary special. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for their first season. But the reboot had 13 for the first season. And technically, this season of Freakazoid has kind of 12, doesn't it? Because wasn't one of them, or is that listed on the...
Yeah, I guess the way you would think it's 12 is because there's the one episode that's split in two, the chip part 1 and part 2.
Well, isn't there? But isn't like Candlejack on 2 different episodes or something?
That's
like that?
only if you, they made some extra episodes that don't count as new episodes because they're just pieces of other episodes, but those aren't in the 13. So
okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, yeah. So 13.
But if you're watching
total.
on the DVD, they'll have some of those in there where you're like, oh, I don't know why they put them in the DVD.
I don't know either, but it is nice for the completists to have that experience. I suppose,
but I don't think they have all the bonuses. So it's like they only have. So it's like either have all of the episodes or none of them. Or none of the extra recut episodes. Is sort of confusing.
I suppose that transitions us to the thing I have to make sure I always remember to talk about before we start going into Freakazoid is, where do you watch these episodes? Well, there you can get them on DVD if you're lucky. The first season can be, depending on its availability, which kind of fluctuates, can be a little bit expensive. However, you can purchase the episodes individually on places like Amazon and I believe Apple as well. It is not on Hulu right now. It is not on HBO Max right now, which is really ridiculous, but there has to be some copyright reason, for some reason. I don't know why. It's kind of shocking. I mean, we were just talking to Paul Rugg on our Patreon, and he was like, oh, it's not streaming anywhere?
Yeah.
And he didn't know either. It's like, it really should be. I think it needs to be. So I don't know who we contact out there, internet, but We need to start.
If you're listening and you have the power to get it streaming somewhere, please do that.
Yeah. Well, we all know Mr. Spielberg listens to our show.
Yes. Come on, Steve. I can call you Steve.
If only he listened to our show.
But yes, so there are many different ways to do it. Of course, you can also, find episodes that have been scanned off of old Cartoon Network VHS recordings as well. So, those aren't necessarily the most legal way to do it, but there's ways to check this episode out. And if someone were to ask you about this episode in just a few words, what would you tell them, Nathan?
Spooky, maybe spooky.
It's a spooky episode. Okay. And Kelly, what about you?
They say Poo Gas way too much.
Nathan, tell us, when did this spooky, stinky episode of Freakazoid come out?
Joey, this came out a week after last week's episode. Ooh. So you remember when last week's episode came out, obviously, because I told you that.
Of course. What was that again?
It was, last week's came out on February 3rd of 1996. So this came out on February 10th. Of 1996.
Oh, yes, yeah, I remember.
Saturday now, so you remember. This was, of course, the same day that the IBM computer Deep Blue became the first computer to win a game of chess against a reigning chess champion, Garry Kasparov. So you remember that, right?
Well,
it was also a day after the release of the John Travolta, Christian Slater action movie, Broken Arrow.
I remember seeing that movie. I don't know if I saw it in the theater or on TV, but I do remember seeing that movie.
All right. It was also one day after Peter and Deborah. These contestants won nearly $150,000 in cash prizes, making them the couple of the biggest winners in history of Wheel of Fortune, and they remain the biggest winners for a team to this day.
Wow. Impressive. Yeah. Only $150,000 too. Like, they must really cap people off these days on Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, there was they also had the single person record until 2008.
I think I haven't watched Wheel of Fortune in the longest time. They don't allow people to keep coming back, right? It's just that one day.
Yeah,
and then you're done.
They got to do 2 days in a row, so that's probably why they got.
That's why. So ooh, they got the system.
Something happened.
No one's going to beat that record if they keep doing one day.
I don't even watch Jeopardy anymore.
It's too tough.
I'm waiting for them to pick a host, and I hope it's LeVar Burton, personally.
Yeah.
I think I'd be okay with that, because at least it's somebody I know from my childhood. He's got a comforting voice. He's very intelligent and well-read, obviously, because reading Rainbow.
Yeah.
And I met him at DragonCon. He's just super sweet and nice, and he seems to want the position, so crossing fingers. Yeah,
give it to him.
All these guest hosts are, again, I haven't watched it, but they have not been all that well received.
Yeah. I don't need to see Anderson Cooper doing
or Dr. Oz.
Oh, Dr. Oz. Boy, yeah, he was definitely not well received. Well, at any rate, yes, I was just thinking, this is our Valentine's episode of Freakazoid, coming out February 10th. Isn't that nice?
Spooky.
Such a spooky romantic episode. Well, let's get right into it. Let's go ahead and start off with House of Freakazoid. And House of Freakazoid was written by the creator of Harley Quinn, Paul Dini, and it was directed by Scott Geralds. And Nathan, why don't you tell us what happens here in House of Freakazoid?
Ooh, all right. Well, it's a dark and stormy night, and Dexter Douglas is busy typing on his computer, and we see out the window a shadowy figure who comes to the door. And he rings the doorbell, and Dexter's dad comes and answers it.
I'm Lonnie Talbot.
That's great. Take care now.
You don't understand. I have to see your son, Dexter. I'm his, driving instructor.
Dexter's driving instructor is a Scotsman.
Student guidance counselor?
Oh, sure. Go on up.
He's going upstairs to meet him, and he announces that he is Lonnie Talbot. And he's been bitten by a werewolf, and he will turn into a wolf as well at the full moon's light. But Dexter, he's like, "Why are you here?" He's like, "Well, because you are also inflicted by a curse that you change back from, and I'm hoping that you can help me." And then there's another knock on the door, and there's a gypsy, and Dexter's dad lets her up as well, because why not? And she tells us that, yes, Dexter is cursed with the keyboard delete key, which we remember from the Chip episode. And and then she leaves. And this is when we notice that outside there's a full moon. So, hey,
a real full moon, by the way, too, not an animated one. This is a real full moon.
Yeah. So Lonnie Talbot sits down on the chair, and he slowly transforms into a werewolf. Oh no!
Sounds like Dexter's playing Twister again.
And it's scary. He's about to attack Dexter. So Dexter freaks out, as it is, turns into Freakazoid, and slowly turns into Freakazoid as well.
I'll help you out, my little mangy pal.
Freakazoid decides to take this wolfman to his freak-lair, and he shaves him off, but hoping that would turn Lonnie back into a normal human. It does not work, so he has a better idea, which is to suck Lonnie into the computer back at Dexter Douglas's house.
I'm gonna dump you into cyberspace, Lon. I think the shock might cure you, or not, but what the heck? Remember, this isn't going to hurt me in the least.
So he does the whole typing and hits the delete key, and it sucks the Wolfman into the computer. And when he comes out, Lonnie Talbot is back to normal, and he's very thankful to Freakazoid, and we think that's it. But turns out Lonnie Talbot comes back like the next day, I don't know, and he brings all his friends, which are Frankensteins and whatever.
A Frankenstein,
Draculas.
a mummy, and a Dracula. It's all the Universal monsters.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a whole house of monsters.
Ooh. So. Well, this episode had, quite a few references in it. Let's, I guess, first talk about Lonnie Talbot, who, of course, his name looks like, when you just read it, it looks like Lonnie Tall Butt, which is kind of funny. But it looks like a caricature of Lon Chaney Jr., who was in the Wolfman movies. Appeared as the Wolfman in, The Wolfman, I believe, and the Wolf, Abbott and Costello Meet the Wolfman, and Lon Chaney Jr. was also in a movie that I remember seeing as a kid on Mystery Science Theater, The Indestructible Man. So I remember watching that big old face on Mystery Science Theater, which they did a lot of close-ups on that big face of his on that movie. But Lon Chaney, of course, was his father, who was known as the man of was it 1,000 or 1,000,000 faces? I don't know. The guy knew how to use makeup.
12.
But he was like in the silent movie era, and he did, of course, Phantom of the Opera and Hunchback of Notre Dame. He had so Lon Chaney Jr. kind of rode his dad's coattails into horror movie fandom. He looks nothing like his father that I can see, but
Lon Chaney, that's one of the Animaniacs intros, right?
Yes, exactly.
Lon Chaney.
So there you go. So little connection right there. There's another Animaniacs connection coming on later in today's episode.
Yeah.
Let's see. It's very art noir at the very beginning. I mean, lots of shadows. I mean, just showing his eyes and, like Dexter's house when he, the camera shots in it reminded me a lot of like an Alfred Hitchcock film with like the banister railings with the use of shadows and everything, which looked pretty cool.
More shadows.
And I guess there was the other kind of reference that I could see of note was when his cat, I guess, senses that he's a wolf man and freaks out and hits the window. Mr. Chubbikins hits the window and just kind of sticks to it like a Garfield. Remember those stuffed animal decal or decal things?
That's why that seemed familiar.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's like the Garfield thing. Which now, I mean, you don't think about it, but man, back in the 80s, especially the 80s, every car had them, and people were putting them on the outside of their car, the inside of their car.
Garfield was so big back then.
He was huge.
He hated Mondays.
Oh, and loved lasagna. What a guy.
Poor Odie.
Poor Odie and Normal. But anyway, let's see. There's also like a Poltergeist reference, I believe. He says, "This house is clean."
This house is clean.
And a little bit later, he says something like "they're back" or "it's back."
He's back.
I haven't seen Poltergeist 2 or 1.
Oh,
I did see that one because we did it during that break that one time.
I think that's what she says in Poltergeist too. I haven't seen that one as often. I mean, I've probably only seen it a couple times, but anyway, it made me think of Poltergeist.
There we go.
In addition to this house is clean.
But let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that we thought were cute or funny or of note. Kelly, let's start with you.
I thought it interesting. Not really a fan of it, but the way he transformed into the Wolfman and then Freakazoid changed. You know, they almost look like still paintings instead of actual animation.
Right, and that's why I wrote down transformation on my notes as a reference. But yes, the way that he changes is in reference to how they used to do those kinds of changes in the old B movies, where you'd basically just kind of show a person and each time they would add a little bit of makeup to them and just kind of dissolve into the next one. Mm-hmm. And that's how you made somebody look like they were magically changing, which never quite looked.
It really makes you respect the morphing sequence used in Willow, because that was basically like, I think the first time the morphing program
that come out
CGI was
before Werewolf in London.
No, it didn't. Werewolf in London's transformation is really, that's all.
That's Rick Baker, I think. Isn't it Rick Baker?
It's the only like werewolf movie I've seen that's like famous, you know, that wasn't made in the last like 10 years or something.
Yeah, that's all makeup.
Yeah, that was really well done. Like you see it growing out of his, like
it's painful.
Painful, yeah.
Yeah. It's that movie still holds up. It's a dark comedy, that's for sure. But I guess we should also mention that the voices of Lonnie right here was voiced by, I had his name, Mitch Shower. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. But he's mostly an art director and works in the art department for this show and for many other cartoons. So I guess he's only done a voice on this show and for Angry Beavers. So he's not really a voice actor, but he did a good job on this. So they just
pulled him in one day like, hey.
Probably, yeah.
Want to do something real quick?
Yeah, exactly. You don't understand. Jim Cummings was the voice, however, as soon as he turned into the Wolfman, because when you need just sounds, you go to Jim Cummings because
I love Jim Cummings.
Yeah, he was great. I mean,
he was super nice the time I met him.
He does seem like a super nice person. I can't wait for the cons to open back up so I can actually meet him in person someday. Nathan, what about you? What did you find funny in this first part?
I like the transformation scene. It made me laugh watching that. There's some books in the foreground that have some like little jokes on them about like, you know, they say like overlays for fun and profit, book for depth of field and the large foreground elements. So they're like right in your face. There's some really cool shots. I think the animation on this was really interesting. It was done by Tama Production. I think it was the only segment they've ever done. Freakazoid
did look a little different, especially when he's like cutting his hair. Different expressive stuff, like when he has the razor in his arm and he's kind of doing those swiping movements and stuff like that. So that looked pretty cool.
And the gypsy was funny.
The gypsy was definitely very funny. I very much enjoyed.
We don't say that anymore. We don't say gypsy anymore.
But if they are but she was a gypsy though.
No, I think that I think it's derogatory. You have to say like Roma or Romani. Now I think
I assume her name was Gypsy, like in Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Well, that's true. I mean, yeah,
or Gypsy Rose Lee or whatever.
Yeah, so we have to kind of watch with the name Gypsy. It's very interesting. But yes, I have heard like you're not supposed to say like, oh, I got gypped or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's definitely not cool to use that anymore.
Right, and
not that it ever was cool, but it's recognized that it's.
Exactly.
Cool.
But I had zero idea that that's where it came from. So
same.
Yeah. So the other day I was like, oh man, they gypped me. And my wife was like, you can't say that. I'm like, why?
Yeah. I'm finally watching Gilmore Girls and they use that in an episode. And of course that's an older show, but it's the first time I've watched it and they use that. And I was like, oh, they can't say that nowadays.
I know.
It's interesting how certain phrases like that, we now out of respect don't use, but cursing is a lot more acceptable in television nowadays. I noticed that when Buffy came on, like, oh, now we can say on TV now. So it's interesting how language changes and the network censors adapt.
Well, I just censored you out. You don't even realize it because.
And it's funny because the audience won't know what word you said.
I know. Oh.
I forgot we're family friendly.
What did they say? We'll never know. You guys will have to watch Buffy to find out.
Or you can just take out that whole bit.
Yeah, well, no, we're keeping it in because it's now funny. So anyway.
Funny ha-ha or funny ho-ho?
Oh, maybe a funny uh-oh. So anyway.
I think funny ho-ho sounds funnier. Ho-ho, ho-ho. Merry Christmas.
So that's there's a bunch of little cute moments in this. I did like the part where Freakazoid has to suck him into the internet and he tells him, this is not going to hurt me at all. This is not going to hurt me one bit. And so a lot of cute moments, but yeah, not my favorite villain that he faces off against, but it's at least I think presented dramatically, like the look of it has a nice look to the whole
and I'm guessing
thing.
If I had seen Wolfman, I'd appreciate a lot of this even more.
I
watched some clips on YouTube and I'm like, oh, that's funny. Yeah, like, oh, look at that.
I saw I Was a Teenage Werewolf with Michael Landon, again from Mystery Science Theater. But again, if it's not a Mystery Science Theater, I probably didn't watch it as a kid when it came to monster movies. Because
have we talked about the Daddy-O on Mystery Science Theater?
I believe we have. Who did the musical compositions?
Johnny Williams.
That's right.
And because when I watched it for the very first time, I mean, I've only seen Daddy-O like once. I'm like, what is that? Is that the same? And I looked it up, and sure enough, it was like pretty much his first film credit.
Yes.
The John Williams did a movie that ended up on Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yeah, and it's a very kind of beatniky kind of thing, and he is kind of I heard he's kind of a beatniky kind of guy too.
Yeah. What is it he calls people?
He calls JJ. He called JJ Abrams JJ Baby.
Yes, so
JJ
he
Baby.
definitely talks like that,
which I think is so super cool.
Yeah, he seems cool.
Well, enough tangents. Let's go ahead and get to our second segment right now, and it is called Sewer or Later.
A city fast asleep, but crime never sleeps. Not even when it's really tuckered out from listening to the radio all night in its room.
And Sewer or Later was written by Kate Donahue, and it was directed by Ronaldo del Carmen. And Kelly, why don't you tell us what happens here in Sewer or Later?
Okay. There's a jewelry store, and a big snake comes out of the ground, and it's a cobra, and it busts its head through the glass and steals the jewelry. And the cops show up, and they don't know what happened because they say, we got here like within minutes, and there's nothing nobody here.
It'll take a keen mind to solve this one. Good to see you, lad. Are you well?
I feel better than a nice tub of good things.
Splendid.
And then Freakazoid shows up and he does some investigating and puts together that it's Cobra Queen and she's in the sewers and she's controlling the snakes that stole the jewelry.
I suppose you'll be going down there after her.
No.
What? I don't get it.
You don't understand. I can't go down there. I hate sewers. They smell like poo gas.
And he runs away, and Cosgrove drives up alongside of him. And
Hey, Freakazoid.
Oh, hi, Cosgrove.
You want to head over to the Great Hall of Spackle?
Do I? Let me do the siren.
they go to the Spackle Museum, and they're looking at the pyramid and talking about how you can't even see the spackle on the pyramid, and Freakazoid says it's Egyptians are his favorite ancient race.
By the way, word has it that Cobra Queen is holed up in the sewers.
You going down after her?
Nah, I hate the smell of poo gas.
Well, so do I, but everyone expects me to go down there.
That's part of being a superhero. It goes with the fancy tights and the lightning in your hair.
No! A big N followed by a little O? No! I am never going down into the sewers after Cobra Queen. Never, ever, ever. I really mean it. No! See? I said I'd never go.
But he ends up doing it.
Yeah.
And
come back from commercial break, and somehow he decided to do it again.
Yeah. And so he's wearing like a gas mask when he's down there initially, and then he takes it off and breathes the air. And I'm like, I don't understand that. Why? Because he's just like, they like, ew, gross. And
they would have saved so much. They would have saved so much money on animation if he just kept that mask on.
Yeah, they're worrying about lip syncing earlier, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I didn't understand that. That didn't make any sense to me. But then he's running around the sewers, and he runs into one of the snakes and has a little chocolate mouse, and the snake gets really excited, like a dog.
No! Bad giant cobra. First you have to do a trick. You have to sit up straight and beg.
Kind of knocks itself out a little bit, so he tells the snake that it deserved the little mouse, so he puts it on his head. And then he runs into another one, and this one he gets like chase him through these holes in the walls, and so as it's winding its head through one of the holes, he ties up the tail so it can't get the back end of it through the other hole. So it thinks he's about to eat Freakazoid, and he gets stuck. So then he kind of sinks beneath the water. So then he runs into the Cobra Queen. She's sitting on her throne.
Devour him!
Your snakes don't scare me. I've developed a little technique for beating them. Let's see. First my loud Conan war cry, then charge, then grab the snake around the neck, then make something out.
I've got this snake fighting business down.
They end up kind of talking and sparring a little bit verbally, and he ends up telling her that she sounds like Sylvester the cat.
That's mighty good spitting for a woman who talks like Sylvester the cat.
I don't talk like Sylvester the cat.
Sure do. Say, suffer and succotash, I saw a giant mouse. Go!
Suffer and succotash, I saw a giant mouse. There, that didn't sound anything like Sylvester.
Oh yeah? Say, Silly Sally sells sappy silver seashells in Seattle. Go!
Silly Sally sells sappy Let me try again. Silly Sally sells sterling one more time. Silly Sally sells silly
I wonder why that worked.
So then the police come. He's back up above ground. They're getting the snakes into the back of a truck. He's playing a little lute. Is it not a lute? Flute. and bringing them up out of the sewer into the back of the truck. And then he's talking to Cosgrove about how smelly it was down there. And
It stank down there, Cosgrove, but Cobra Queen stank even worse. Now that she's behind bars, I think this city's starting to smell a little better.
Speaking of which, you ought to wash up. You smell like Poo Gas.
Do you think we've said Poo Gas enough?
Freakazoid wonders if they've said Poo Gas too much in the episode, which I think they did.
They did say Poo Gas quite a bit in this one, which it was definitely, when I first saw that we were reviewing this episode, I immediately thought of, Poo Gas, because he does say it. And I remember liking that quite a bit when I initially saw this when I was in high school back in 1996. Well, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, but really, like, I mean, there's the older gentleman is Paul Harvey, or at least a caricature of him.
Oh my! Who is this Cobra Queen? Who is this sinister, sibilant snake lover? Once she was Audrey Manatee of Skokie, Illinois, and made her living as a shoplifter. Until one day, she pilfered an experimental beauty lotion that had been left in the sun too long.
I believe Paul Rugg worked in a radio station for a few years, and Paul Harvey had these interstitial segments that they would run in between, like during commercial breaks or in between different talk radio shows, doing the rest of the story. And I remember him all the time because my mom
grew up to be
Ronald Reagan. That's the rest of the story. So yes, Paul Rugg does a very good Paul Harvey impression right there. But it's always great to see him giving like exposition for these characters. But there really isn't any big references that I really saw that stood out, other than it really looks like Cobra Queen really looks like somebody that you'd see in a Batman the Animated Series episode. And that's, of course, Bruce Timm did the initial designs of Freakazoid and a lot of the other characters before handing over the project to Tom Ruegger and Paul Rugg and John P. McCann and stuff. So you could see the connection. It really kind of felt like, boy, this feels like almost like just a zany episode of Batman the Animated Series. Because it does feel like something Batman would do. I have to go down to the sewer and stop a Cobra Queen and giant snakes. Yeah, it really, except with Batman, he'd throw batarangs at him and have the wall collapse on them and move on and do it in a cooler way. But, Freakazoid's not like that. But what are some moments that made you smile, laugh, etc.? Nathan, let's start with you.
I like Freakazoid's plan. Just make something up as his
yes.
Like the first two things. Yeah, it's fun. And then of course the I'm never gonna go down. You never. And then you cut to the sewer. And you pan up to the ladder.
Yeah, I like how the camera pans around. It
and then
keeps
you
looking
pan
for
over
him.
to the... and then just like, see, I told you I'm never going
down. The rats in the sewer, he didn't like the rats, but I'll say those rats were pretty cute. I maybe they were like lab rats. They were white. They weren't even that dirty. So I don't know. I didn't mind them. Well, though it was pretty gross when he said, I hope that's a
candy bar.
Bar.
I heard that. I was like,
really gross. That's another line I remember as a kid. Like, gross.
And then Freakazoid using his investigating skills is fun. Just I don't know. He's usually not that smart, and
they need a great mind. The police say we need a great mind. We're going to need to have you use your great mind for this, Freakazoid. I didn't know he had a great mind.
Yeah, apparently. But yeah, I was but my favorite part for sure is the sewer scene. So.
All right.
That's what I remember from the episode as a kid too.
Okay. And Kelly, what about you?
I thought it was funny. He was watching TV and it was Animaniacs.
That's true. I wish there was an episode. The only thing I was watching it today, like, man, the Animaniacs, I know I shouldn't be picky because it's just a background shot and everything, but the Warners did look kind of weird, and they were just these Yakko and Wacko running. That was it. It was like
animation that like I could maybe do.
Exactly.
Like it was not the best animation.
But I know I'm so spoiled. I'm like, oh, it would have been so much cooler if they actually showed an actual episode or reference to an actual episode of Animaniacs.
Like they show live action things all the time. Why not?
It's true. I guess they could have just. Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, I will say the one thing we already mentioned a lot of things that I like, but I did like when she just thought it was Atomic Boy.
Oh yeah, that was great.
The lighting.
Look who's come to visit. If it isn't my dear friend, Atomic Boy.
Freakazoid. I'm Freakazoid.
Oh, I'm so terribly sorry, Freakazoid. The light is dreadful down here.
That made me laugh.
Well, let's go ahead and get to our. Before we get to our Water Tower rating, I should mention because we usually forget to mention them. The end of the credits, Freakazoid was picking his nose and then got caught, and there you go.
Ew.
Yeah,
There's also the gag credit.
The gag credit was like Emmett Nervin's in therapy, right, or something like that.
Yeah, find Emmett Nervin, please, instead of saying how many times.
Yeah, and
Emmett
Emmett
Nervin at
Nervin
least twice because of the opening credits, and one says Freakazoid.
Yeah, he has a very prominent one in the transformation, which was pretty cool. Nice to see him drawn or painted so well in this one. Okay, let's go ahead and get to the Water Tower rating. What do you think? Out of 5 water towers, how many would you give this episode of Freakazoid? Nathan, let's start with you.
Okay. All right. I can't remember. No, I'm looking back at previous ones so I can. Okay.
This is very scientific for Nathan. Kelly and I just kind of go with our gut. Nathan has a spreadsheet.
I look back. I have my spreadsheet. I wanted to see what I gave the first episode. All right. This one I'm going to give 2.5 water towers.
Okay.
Because, it's funny. About the same level as Moron, the Sewer Rescue, and the Big Quest, which I also gave 2.5. Yeah, I gave the very first episode 4 water towers, so I had room for improvement, and it was not as good as the first episode, so I was like, okay.
All
so
right.
2.5.
Okay.
It's there were very funny parts, but overall, I think it could have used one more segment, I think.
Yeah, I would have loved like an interstitial kind of something, just a little zany something in this. Kelly, what about you?
I might give it 2. Because I literally didn't find anything really funny in it.
Did they mention Steven Spielberg in this one? I can't remember. I thought they might have had.
No.
Oh, that's where.
So, because when Joey asked me what I found funny, I was like, Animaniacs.
There you go.
So, I mean, that was really about I was like, oh, cool. And the Animaniacs showed up. So, yeah. I mean, it was fine. It was kind of gross, too, which didn't help with its score. But
at least they didn't show.
And you know I don't like snakes. So, because I'm like Indiana Jones. Yeah. Why did it have to be snakes? That's very dangerous. You go first. Yeah. So, yeah, snakes and sewers and Poo Gas. No, thank you.
Okay. And the Wolfman couldn't, even Jim Cummings as the Wolfman could not save that one for you then. Okay.
No.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and give it a 3. I honestly was going to give it a 3.5, but the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I'll give it a 3 just because, both segments I like and everything, but the villains themselves are kind of boring. I was never really a Cobra Queen fan.
Yeah, this is probably her best episode though, but
yeah. The snake the bigger snake that she, the boss snake, I guess you could call it.
Like a king snake or something. Yeah.
I don't like how it has horns. Do snakes really have horns like that? Because that's weird. It always bothered me, even as a kid. Like, why does that snake have horns? Snakes don't have horns, do they? I don't know. It looks scary.
Oh, well, there's some have the horn on the what is it called? The horn-nosed viper.
On their nose.
On the nose.
Not their head. Well, I don't know. Genetic mutations, these things are big. But a 3 for me. It still has some funny moments, but nothing really to make me say, like, oh, you got to watch this episode of Freakazoid.
Yeah, like this is one I would probably have someone skip for the next episode because the next one's so good. Like,
all right, so stay tuned in a month or so for our review of the first season finale of Freakazoid. But until then, let's go ahead and get to some contact information. Nathan, where can people find you online?
Oh, Joey, I'm on Twitter. JingoFT. That's me.
All right. And Kelly, what about you?
I'm also on Twitter, Yoda Princess, YODA, PRNCSS, or email me, Kelly at BigShinyRobot.com.
All right. As for Animaniacast, we're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And of course, you can go over to the RetroZap Discord server, where you can talk to us and all of our other fellow RetroZap podcasters and writers. We're a proud member of the RetroZap Podcast Network. Subscribe to that feed. You can get all those podcasts delivered right to your device. And of course, you can head on over to Animanicast.com, and that'll take you to our whole collection of different episodes over there on RetroZap. Please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast player of choice. You can rate and review us on whatever, and we just might share those reviews here on the Animaniacast. We haven't done that in a long time. We need to do that. And of course, patrons, if you'd like to become a patron over at patreon.com/Animaniacast, you'll get bonus audio of us talking about stuff, but of course, more bonus audio of Tom Ruger and us, and even special guests like Paul Rugg, going over episodes of Animaniacs. So you can queue up a classic episode of Animaniacs and queue up us, and then it's like you're watching an episode of the original series with the creator of the show. How cool is that? So check it out.
We're in the room too.
Yeah, and we're there too. That's not important. But patreon.com/Animaniacast, check it out, and we appreciate your support. Well, that'll do it for today's episode. So for Nathan and Kelly, this is Joey saying, good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
This podcast is not endorsed by Warner Brothers or Amblin Entertainment and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Animaniacs, Tiny Toon Adventures, Freakazoid, the Warner Brothers logo, all names, pictures, and sounds are registered trademarks and or copyrights of their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of the Animaniacast unless otherwise indicated.
Stratigo! I'll get it. Stratigo. Stratigo!